Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everything Electric podcast, coming to you, as you can tell, from a slightly different environment than we normally do. Not in a studio, not on a Zoom call. This is a one-to-one podcast, and I'm very excited about this. Now, I'm waiting to be picked up. I'm going to be given a lift just outside Leeds at the moment, and I'm going to be given a lift by Katie White MP. She's the MP for Leeds North West, and she's going to pick me up and give me a lift because it's about to start raining quite heavily, so I'm quite keen that she turns up soon. She is the Minister for Climate in the current UK administration. She has an amazing history which we will discuss, and so I'm really looking forward to meeting her. So please welcome to the Everything Electric podcast, Katie White MP.
Our 3 free YouTube channels on EVs and clean energy tech are funded by our fun-packed test drive-tastic events in the North, West and Greater London, and our events down under. Next up, Everything Electric North 2026. Plus, check out everythingelectric.store for merch and much more. Back to the episode.
Hi. Well, lovely. So this is lovely for me, I've got to say. It's very exciting to be given a lift. This is the first for me.
The first time you've been driven?
No, not the first time I've been driven. First time I've been driven by a sitting Member of Parliament.
There you go.
Yeah, it's never happened. I have met 1 or 2 MPs in my life, but I've never been driven by one, particularly in a beautiful electric Fiat.
Super cool car.
Super cool. So when you drove in just now, I just went, oh my God.
It's cool, isn't it?
It's proper cool. Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it, I have to say. And yeah, everybody is... I had it totally in my mind of what I wanted for so many different reasons. I mean, I've been driving electric for quite a few years, but this is my car. Like, my husband and I were sharing, and I know this is mine.
Right.
So
is he allowed in it at all? Is it?
Sort of. I'm quite territorial. I do let my mother-in-law drive it. She really likes it. Right. Yeah, she loves it when she comes up. It's commonly referred to as Little Red.
Right.
So we're like, where's
Little Red? I can understand why.
Yeah,
it is
exactly.
little and red.
It's exactly.
And it's a lovely red. It's a beautiful colour. Wow.
Yeah, it sort of pops, doesn't it? Yeah. It's nice. I like it.
So can you do a quick sort of explanation, because there's going to be people seeing this that aren't in the UK that won't know who you are and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure.
So how you... Well, wait, because you were at the... I remember you from the WWF, is that right? World Wildlife...
Yeah.
World... Oh, I'm going to get it wrong. What is it?
World Wildlife Fund for Nature.
Yeah. Thank you. So is that where you started out? Or where...
So I've got a bit of a weird thing. So I grew up in Leeds, in North Leeds, near here. And I was very into cars, actually. I mean, I was growing up with more green space, but very into cars.
Right.
So I used to go to the Birmingham Motor Show every year. Right. Bizarrely, I was a bit of a Jeremy Clarkson fan, which is obviously not...
Well, no, it's very understandable. He's a very, very knowledgeable man, very professional.
And I really like cars. My dad was into cars. It was a thing we did together. So very much into it when I was growing up. And then I got into climate change when I was at university.
Right.
And skip forward, as you say, worked in various different contexts, led a campaign for the climate change law as my first sort of job, which was successful. And now, sort of 20 years later, I'm the climate minister.
Right.
In charge of the carbon budgets that we implemented. So it's a bit of a circle of life.
Yeah.
But in between that, I have the great privilege of representing Leeds North West, which we're not driving through, but we're nearby.
We're not far from.
We're not far from because. But yeah, so I'm the Member of Parliament, and I was appointed the Climate Minister last September.
Right. Oh, so it's all pretty. That side of your life it's still pretty new.
Yeah.
And it's kind of. I mean, I just cannot imagine the pressure and the difficulties. I mean, you don't have to go into any detail, but it's just with the few times I've had direct contact with MPs and people in Parliament, I'm like going, oh my God, I just couldn't cope with it. And the kind of torrent of news that you're affected by, and that you kind of, is it exhausting?
It's definitely a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it must be exciting as well. I mean, it must.
Yeah. It's all of the emotions.
Right.
It's all of the emotions. It's exhilarating. It's exciting. It's upsetting.
Yeah.
It's humbling. It's everything you can think of. It's a rainbow of emotions.
Yeah.
I kind of think, yes, it is a job that, I mean, it's sort of multiple jobs in one, particularly if you're fortunate enough to be a minister as well as an MP. It literally is 2 jobs. And so I guess there is a lot of cognitive load is a challenge for sure. But then I also feel like a lot of people in our country are overwhelmed at the moment.
Yeah.
I think like cognitive load is a challenge for everybody.
Yeah.
So I don't, I don't want to get my tiny violin out and say, but yeah, it's a lot, and it's trying to make sure you're choiceful about the things you focus on.
Right.
And I think, where do I think I could make a difference on this debate, and how can I bring a different angle to it? And the sort of, for me, the transition to a low carbon Britain, green Britain, whatever you want to call it, it's got loads of different angles. And there's angles that are scary and sad, and whatever. There's also angles that are really exciting. And like and I want to be able to hold both those spaces. Because it going back to that sort of rainbow of emotions, I think there's so much, in terms of being that we need to be aware of why we're doing this, what the risks are, but also like, what are the opportunities? Electric vehicles are really fun. Like, they're really fun. It's not like we're saying, oh, let's swap your life for a sort of a worse version. We're not at all. Like, I think when you first drive an electric vehicle, one of the things, obviously, it was quieter, it's sort of sometimes smoother, but it's a lot faster. The sort of the torque.
They're very nippy, aren't they?
They're very nippy.
But I mean, that's interesting though, in the sense there are some people I know who've bought an electric vehicle specifically and entirely from a sort of ecological point of view, and they want to make less damage of that was the driving force. They weren't interested in cars. They didn't have any history of interest in cars. They just drove one because it was brown and and it was comfy. Whereas you actually do have a history of like being a bit of, in a sense, a bit of a petrol head
for sure
when you were young, and then so that transition, I think, is really interesting, that you adopted this technology very enthusiastically because of what it actually does.
Totally.
Which is hard to explain if you've never driven one.
Totally. And I remember I did have a car in the middle, which I won't say because it's not fair on the car, but I specifically bought the car because I think it was the lowest grams of CO2 on the market.
Right.
And I think it was a car that my husband wouldn't go in because he was like, this is the most uncomfortable, horrible.
Right.
I mean, it was fine, but it wasn't joyful.
No.
And listen, I think, I think people want to do the right thing. Of course they do. Like, everybody's invested in leaving things better for their children and grandchildren. I think that sort of goes without saying. But we also would like a dollop of joy and a bit of fun in our lives. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And for me, electric cars do both.
Yeah. And I mean, because I'm going to ask a really obvious question now, but I think it is worth asking, because the one thing that we're probably very exposed to is or certainly in my history of dealing with this topic, is the negative response. They're dirtier than diesel, the batteries, all those things. Is it from a life cycle point of view, do you feel that an electric vehicle has less damaging impact than a petrol one?
Yes.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's pretty bloody obvious, but it's sometimes quite a hard thing to argue. Some people are very emotionally invested. I'm not even saying they're evil or wrong or vile. They're just very emotionally invested in their petrol cars. Has to be said, quite often men, not always. But
I mean, for sure. And I get it. Look, change is hard, and more particularly when you've had an emotional connection to something, and it's trying to figure out what that element of it, because in some of it's brand, some of it's look, some of it's feel, some of it is drive, some of it's noise. Actually, there's the like, oh, I don't want to miss the noise. Whereas actually, if people living in cities, having lower noise is much better. Nice. So like, I think it's it's definitely better. Well, look, we need to electrify as much as we can of the country's power, and that's obviously what we're focused on doing, and transport has got a really big role to play in that.
Right. Because I mean, that is one of the things I think is a noticeable change, which has got nothing to do with my, I do have probably more than the average amount of knowledge about, for instance, in London, there are public transport in London, there are delivery vans, there are buses, there are taxis, that have become electric. And I now, as I don't live in London, so when I go there, I go, oh, it's not as bad as it used to be. You know, you can actually sense it. You don't need to be told. You walk down the street and it doesn't smell as strongly as it did of diesel and of fumes and of, you know, it has made, I mean, I think from a point of view, even data of the recording of air quality, it has improved in London, hasn't it? Which is...
Yeah, I think you make some really important points. I mean, look, so air quality is one of those things, particularly you say in big cities. And you're like, it's crazy. So obviously in cities, it's been a really big issue, and the connection between you know, air quality and those of having those co-benefits, we call them, sorry, horrible word, but basically obviously cleaner air, immediate health benefits for people is a really good thing. But you are also, in terms of, it's interesting because I didn't grow up in London, I'm not from London, so it's a very different experience, and I think for people outside London, certainly from where I grew up here, your car was a really important part. Now, obviously, we want to make sure that we've got good public transport. It's good for lots of other reasons, including congestion, particularly in cities. But for people who live in the suburbs, your car is a really important thing. And so I think it's understanding that. And I certainly get that, you know, it's, you know, some people's a status thing, but it's comfort, it's, you know, independence, all the elements that go with that. Cars are really important.
Well, it's like now, you know, because I was a long time cyclist, particularly when I lived in London, because I didn't have a car when I lived in London, and I always rode a bike. But on days like this, I can remember riding a bike going, car looks quite warm and comfy. All the cars that were overtaking me was on my bike, soaking wet, freezing cold.
I know. I've got a couple of colleagues at work who cycle back at night, and I'm like, oh, should I do it? But I was like, if it's 11 o'clock at night after our votes, it just doesn't feel too appealing, to be honest.
No, I can understand that. But then I think that thing is the sort of, you know, obviously the show we make, we're talking very much about the cars and the latest cars that we've got and all those sort of things, which is, you know, I'm not criticizing that, but I can't help being privately obsessed with public transport in particular, with electric. When you do see it en masse, you go, that makes so much more sense. It's so much nicer. Well, that we've just overtaken a bin lorry or a trash collectors or whatever you want to call it. And when you see electric ones of those, you go, which are in use, and I've seen them in London. I'm that sad. I followed a bin lorry down the street, so I was watching how it worked, and it was so quiet. It made the only noise was the bins, you know, whereas they used to be very noisy vehicles. But those things are, you know, out of the control of individuals. That is kind of, in a sense, government policy and councils and all those people that are going to decide to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you made me laugh because actually I took a picture of a van the other day in London.
I know, looking at them.
I know, we're so sad to see each other. But it's great to see those developments, as you say, and whether it's like electric buses and things coming forward that you can see, and it's an upgrade and it's an improvement, you know, on what we've had before. So I'm going to go up here. See if it's not. Oh, is there a road closed? If there is, we don't want to go there. We won't do that one.
No,
we won't do the road closed.
Road ahead closed.
We'll carry on with here. We'll be fine.
But that, I mean, I think that's one of the areas that excites me, is because the kind of peripheral knock-on effects of having. Well, the one example, which I don't know what's happening there now, but certainly there was a period where the classic American yellow school bus, they were converting those to electric drive, but they were also using them as energy storage and distribution things when they're not, because they know exactly when they're used. They use the same time every day, in the morning and in the evening, to get the kids to and from school. And they were quiet, and they didn't have loads of smoke coming out of them. Because I've been with friends in New York who had kids in New York State, and the school bus came and a cloud of black smoke came along with it, because it was filthy old diesel engine. And now that doesn't happen. But what happens then is that the bus group, well, it's the only federal organisation, isn't it, in America, they are making money because they're buying electricity when it's cheap and they're selling it when it's expensive. And you go, well, that's quite useful addition to that, that investment. But those things we're just starting to see come to fruition now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's really exciting. To see how things are changing, and say whether it's overnight charging rates, etc., that people are using in a much more sensible way of how do we use our energy system more efficiently to balance out, because obviously we're usually putting on a charge at night. That makes sense to us, and therefore, and other, energy isn't being used for other things. So I think, it's it's very exciting to see all of those different changes occurring, and to see the sort of opportunities that we can unlock, and for other people. I mean, we've just opened up a big community energy fund, so where communities can apply and actually have their own energy. They can solar
kind of
farms,
a localized
exactly
network, right?
And also, then people are making money from it, and so obviously there's much more support for it.
Yes.
So in that sense, how do we maximize all of the benefits of this change? I think though it is hugely exciting when you can see what you can unlock for different things.
No, that is wonderful though. I mean, because it is the combination of the environmental thing, because people have often said to me, people who don't really understand what I do, but they go, "Oh, you're very good with the environment." I go, "I'm really not." It's very important to know. I'm lazy and I make all the mistakes everybody makes. But you do eventually, and I'm intrigued to know what you think of that you become sort of unconsciously aware of the impact of your actions. It isn't like it's not an intellectual exercise where I go, well, I mustn't do this because this will happen. I go, I don't feel comfy about doing that. It doesn't feel right to buy that thing or to throw that away or to.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you sort of, there's been connotations of, if you were an environmentalist or you care about, then people have connotations of, oh, therefore you are
You're wearing Hessian shoes
and hopefully that's so. But
there's some lovely Hessian shoes out there on the market.
I haven't seen them.
No,
but in terms of, I think, like, actually, if you were a business person, you would be looking at how you can save costs everywhere. You're looking at efficiencies constantly. That's how you run a business. That's how people make, a good business is that they look at how they can make savings to the most efficient, not undercut, but just at that, perfect point of sort of productivity, etc. So actually, it's just using things a bit more sensibly and thoughtfully. So actually, I think that's probably what different people from different backgrounds and ways of thinking can come up with some of the best solutions for this.
Yes.
But I do think it's great that we've got lots of other people. Actually, it's interesting, and that was the second time I'm now mentioning him, but it's interesting how actually Jeremy Clarkson has done quite a lot to raise the profile on nature. Nature and farming. And
all people.
Who would have thought?
Whoever would have thought?
Good for him.
Good
absolutely. For him, that's great. No? So I think actually having, everybody has a locus, and actually when you really underline people are motivated, but they want to live somewhere nice. They want access to green spaces. They want to have a nice park, and they want to leave things better for their children. Fundamentally, they would also like to have lower energy bills and make life easier. Those things are both true, and so I think it's how do we try and hit both of those objectives at the same time.
And I mean, I think just very briefly about Mr. Clarkson. I mean, I've met him a couple of times, and it was beautifully rude to me, but it made me laugh so much I couldn't stand up. And I've been a vociferous critic of his attitudes towards, particularly electric vehicles in the past. Of course, he's changed his mind now, but that farming program, I think, has done more to help people understand the role of farming and how it's done and how difficult it is than anything else I've ever seen on the telly. I mean, it's quite remarkable. And I think it helps to have effectively a stupid person that doesn't know anything about it trying to do it and being hideously criticised by people who do know how to do it. But it also questions a lot of those things. You're right. It has been an extraordinary thing to see how that's changed. But then that side of it, I don't know how free you are to talk about it, but the resistance to that change. So, I mean, I can't help thinking of certain people I know who work in the fossil fuel industry who are lovely. They're not horrible people. They're not evil, but there are aspects of, it's their business. They sell a liquid fuel that we use once. And it comes from sometimes some less than salubrious sources. And I cannot not believe that there isn't pressure from lobbying and on governments to go, well, let's keep going with hybrids for another 20 years because, or whatever. I can hear their influence. And is Is that something you struggle with or that can discuss? Or, I mean, it's got to be a really difficult relationship between the government and the fossil fuel industry, because if they turned the taps off, we'd be stuffed. You know?
Yeah, and I don't think so. I guess for me, coming into politics generally, I feel politics is very binary at the moment. It's very black and white.
Right.
So it's very much like they're bad, other things are good. And that's not true, is it? Like, it's just not true. When you take the next layer down, there's always elements, that we need to, as you say, fossil fuels will be part of our transition.
Yeah.
There's a lot of expertise in the fossil fuel industry that we
incredible
need.
engineering skills.
Exactly.
Unbelievable.
I mean, in Aberdeen, all the geological skills that we've had, we need to transfer. So I think it's around, whereas at the same time, and we won't get everything right on the other side, so to speak. So I think it's like, I guess my positive view is that there is a bit of an unstoppable momentum now.
Yes. You do, because I feel that, and you feel that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Globally, I think there really is. Yeah.
Totally. And actually, I went to COP in Brazil, and I was I have to be honest, I felt a bit like, oh my goodness, I'm going to go. It's not, it doesn't feel like the geopolitics is in a great place. I was a bit skeptical and nervous. I came away like absolutely energized.
Oh wow! Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh right.
And in large part, interestingly, so it's in part because there was, Brazil is so creative and they had loads of civil society in a way that they haven't had in the last few years, and so I think that added a dynamism. But actually, the energy I got was in large part from the British businesses, who were out there, who were, they were out there doing deals, because they were like, we can see the direction of travel, whether it was the City of London, whether it was our energy companies, whether it was investors. They were out there, because they could see, they want us to be in a place where we are taking, making the most of this transition. And I'm pretty unashamedly competitive for Britain, I mean, we are one of other leaders. We're not that out there on our own, and actually there's quite a lot of people stepping at our heels for some of our expertise, and you'll know very much in EVs, there's others going ahead and so on. So
oh goodness,
it's, this is as well as being a transition, this is also a race. And I want to see it. So look, I'm also aware that, if you are in an industry and you're part of something, change is difficult for some people. And change is difficult for some industries, and whether it's individuals and I think I'd always start off with trying to listen to what their concerns are, because sometimes they're legitimate.
Oh gosh.
And actually we can learn and we can amend. Sometimes it's just people that need a bit of reassurance, and so how do we do that? So I guess on electric vehicles, you and I have seen over the past few years that charging infrastructure has just got so much better. And it's getting better all of the time. And when you started and I started, I'd have to plan my journey and think about it. Now
and drive with your fingers crossed that the charger one would be there and one and two would work, which often didn't. It was very challenging.
Whereas now, I have to say, I never plan ahead in terms of, I would just set, I mean, most journeys aren't obviously massive journeys, but even if I was, I might be like, okay, where do I think I'll stop? But on my Google Maps, check, they're everywhere. I went to the Lake District with some girlfriends the other week. I was back late from work and I had to drive over, and then I needed to charge next morning and found, an incredible one. It was 12 minutes. I mean, we were just saying, my only concern was, would I have time for a tea and a wee? Whilst the charging was, because it was like, it's going to be 13 minutes. And I was like, okay, will there be time? I think, but those were legitimate concerns for people. And so I think listening to those legitimate concerns, but then obviously things, and particularly these days, sadly online, you can get conspiracy theories and all that kind of stuff. So I think you've got to be able to call some of that out to make sure that people are feel reassured and want to get on board.
Because that's the thing. I don't do it anything like as much as I did do. But the thing I taught myself was write the immediate response to this ridiculous claim, and then delete it, and then write it again, like you're talking to your mum. Being polite. That was a very important lesson. But that was one of the things I've just learned. So the vehicle I drove up here in to see you, has a 100,000 mile 8-year warranty for the car,
Wow.
and 150,000 mile warranty, and whatever it is, 10-year warranty for the battery.
Wow.
I.e., they know the battery is going to last longer than the
Yeah,
car.
yeah.
And because that argument I still hear sometimes. And actually, let's place the blame for that where it belongs, which was with Mr. J. Clarkson in 2008 when he said this Nissan Leaf, we will throw the battery away after 3 years, and it's powered by coal. You know, that was and people have heard that, and that stayed in the ether in that discussion ever since then, which is a remarkable amount of influence he used to have in that arena. But you don't have to throw the battery. You know, the battery in this car will be fine when this car is like, really, you know, the steering's falling to bits and the back axle's gone and the suspension, you know, in 10, 15 years' time, the battery will be fine. And I think once that piece of information comes out, and the batteries we saw last year I was in China with CATL, really the biggest battery maker in the world. Their batteries, you can't set fire to them, you can fold them in half and crush them under a tank. They drove Chinese tanks over them, which is a slightly alarming thing to witness. They don't catch fire, you know, doesn't matter what you do. And also they outlast the car, you know, they know now, they've got no anxiety about that anymore. So that, I think that's the thing I try and communicate is this is not a static technology.
No, gosh,
it's still moving at an incredible rate.
Totally. Well, and as we move into, as we get more electric vehicles, as we are doing, and you know, the UK is doing pretty well in terms of the number of electric vehicles we've got already. I think we've had the most in Europe in last year. So it's sold in new EVs. So I think there is also creates more of an incentive to recycle these, and so I think it's really interesting. And I was talked to people yesterday about this, around how do we make sure we're looking at that circular economy piece, because in the longer term, obviously, that just, as we've got more of them, it makes more sense to be able to do that. So I think there's a lot of exciting developments going on. In fact, we were talking at the beginning about the scientists before we started, and one of my joys of this job is hanging out with the scientists.
Yeah, I bet,
I always thought UK scientists were cool, but they are absolutely amazing, and we have got some of them
generally optimistic, which I'm always surprised. You always think they're going to go, oh no, we're screwed, there's nothing we can do.
I mean, we've got some of the best scientists in the entire world. Like, you know, it really is something that we lead on. And so I guess it's and I guess they're exciting for me. I'm just gonna turn down here and then we can go back. The scientists are really interesting because obviously they're the ones that are going to tell us what's happening and how we need to respond, but also they're the ones that are doing so much of the innovation. And I think so it's exciting because it holds that space of what are all the risks, how are they doing, and then what are the innovations, and at the forefront of it, as I say, Britain is really some of the best in the world. And as you say, they seem to hold, obviously they have to hold the rigor and everything else that comes with being a scientist, but I love it when they hold the curiosity and the sort of openness of, okay, here's a problem, we're going to solve it, and they just keep turning over stones to try and solve the problem. They don't get caught up in talking about it or shouting about it, and sometimes, you know, that's the bit that frustrates me sometimes about politics is, look, we all know the direction of travel, you know, and you certainly see this in China, the direction of travel, and they know the direction of travel, and that's why they've massively invested in this industry, because they can see that actually climate change, you know, they can see the impacts that have been happening for them and for them directly, but also for the rest of the world. And so they have set their strategy to make sure that they are energy secure, and actually energy security is going to come from where are our most abundant resources? Well, in this pretty windy little nation of ours,
it's pretty
turns
obvious.
out wind is
quite
our,
good.
you know, and I'm like, take back control of our wind, you know, it's our wind, it's British wind, you know, so
No, you're very true. And I think that one of the things I learned from spending a lot of time with engineers and scientists is that, you know, we discuss something, I don't know, any like big major global problem, and they go, oh, and they're I read about it and I just go, oh God, that's awful, that's nothing we can do, we're screwed, it's the end of the world. And they go, oh, this is brilliant. Because then how do you solve this really intractable, difficult thing that we've been living with for decades? And and it just seems to be getting worse. So, you know, it is that engineering mindset, is that, let's fix it then, let's find a way of doing it that isn't like that, and that is the different thing.
Totally.
And I think that is very vibrant in the UK. I think that our history of, you know, in this, if you like, in the initially industrial innovation and the Industrial Revolution, it kind of is weird that it happened here, and that you know, that you've got to be proud. When I see a big old beam engine, I go, oh, that is amazing. We made those first.
Totally.
You know, we have sort of, I mean, but I think every kind of Western economy, America here, Europe has let that go to China in a sense in the last 40 years, you know, because when you go there, you go, oh my God. You know, they're so far ahead technologically now. They kind of caught up with us and then overtaken us at such a speed. But I mean, you know, that's, you know, the batteries in this car are made in China. In that one that's going the other way, you know, that's where that's coming from. And that isn't altogether negative. You know, it is just a simple fact of life. They've got the capacity to do it.
I think going back to your point though about Britain and where do we have to offer? And I was at Orsted in the that wasn't Orsted. I was at Vestas. Sorry, another wind turbine manufacturers. I was at Vestas.
They're different. We didn't mention them.
Sorry.
They're Danish.
Vestas in the Isle of Wight the other week, and they said to me that of the wind turbines that were international across the whole world, over 60% of the technology was created there in the Isle of Wight. And I was like,
isn't that amazing?
They had this great little centre, which is to say had engineers, you know, or scientists at the same time, all together. And actually they had cracked the technology. So I think, look, of course we don't have as many people as a church. We have different advantages, but we are of a size that we can scale things. We have a big enough economy. We have some incredible advanced manufacturing. Our scientists, I think, are one of our superpowers. And how do we pull that together with, you know, with our creative and entrepreneurial spirit and make sure that we create some magic? And I think, look, we're not going to win on everything. Of course we're not. And I think that would be unrealistic to say. And I keep looking at where are our comparative advantages. You know, clearly wind is an advantage, an area where we have an advantage. You know, we've got incredible offshore wind. We're trying to bring back onshore wind. Obviously was faltered under the last government, but we're trying to bring that back. And so those, you know, whether it's on, we're big on green finance, we're good on engineering and on facilitating, bringing projects together. Lots of areas. We're not going to win on solar.
No.
It's not an area, so I think it's in this huge transition, which is incredibly exciting. How do we make best use of the assets that we have? And really make sure that Britain is in the lead so that we do get the economic advantages of it. You know, we have some nuclear skills that no one else in the world has. You know, that's pretty cool. That's why the Americans are working with us, because we've got, you know, expertise that nobody else has. So I think it's also being proud of what we have and how do we supercharge that. And that's, you know, most people don't know that actually over the last 20 years we've reduced our emissions by sort of 54%.
Which is phenomenal. It's not. I mean, I didn't know that, but it's not when you tell people that. And I mean, the two things I always use that statistic, which, you know, has increased over the years, but it's incredible reduction, but also how much money leaves our economy to pay for fuel, which is kind of the thing about energy independence. You know, that is a substantial amount. It's over £1 billion a week, isn't it? That effectively goes to pay for fuel that powers our economy. It's not that we're just giving it away. There is a return on it, but it's still that money. Some of that money could remain in circulation within the UK. And employ lots of people in really good jobs. You know, that's
totally. Look, I think we're all aware that geopolitics is pretty volatile at the moment, and therefore, how do we make ourselves more resilient? And the best way to make so we have to make sure that we are energy secure. And I want to make sure, as I say, that we're laughing, but this is British wind, and why not use it? But the system we're moving towards is obviously we have, as you say, been buying off other people in the past. We don't want to be buying off other people, but in order to invest in our own wind, we have to sort of create much more infrastructure. So I try and use the analogy a bit of, it's a bit like we were renting a house and we were paying somebody else.
Yeah.
And now we're buying our own house. You know, there's an upfront payment on that.
Yes. Yeah.
But once we, you know, that will be coming back to us.
Yeah.
And so that's the shift that we need to explain to people.
Yeah. Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Hankook. The Hankook Ion tyre is built exclusively for electric vehicles, engineered to deliver what EV drivers need most: confident grip, quietness, energy efficiency, and long mileage. As the official tyre partner of Formula E, Hankook proves its EV technology is at the highest level of performance and brings that same innovation to every Ion tyre on the road. So, I mean, the other, you know, clearly your focus has been on the environment and on climate change, you know, and this is kind of critically important for us, and particularly for me, when we've done episodes in the past about a new electric car that's smaller and lighter and cheaper and faster and all that, millions of views, you know, instantly. Yeah. But if we do an episode which uses the word climate in the title, the views just fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
And so we've been, in a sense, I've worked on the assumption that people kind of know that that's in the background of what we're talking about, but we don't go up front about it. But the thing is, it's really important. It's a critically important part of, you know, all our lives now, is how that's changing. And I don't know, you know, that it's that communication. So you've done that far more than me, how you communicate that in the most positive way, because, you know, as we know, there are some now quite prominent politicians who just go, it's all nonsense. It's a lie, it's a con by the liberal elite who're forcing us to, you know, eat muesli and wear Hessian shoes or whatever the weird thing is. But, you know, that's really, and that's such an easy argument to make. Oh, it's all nonsense. Don't worry about it. Buy a diesel. You know, it's fine.
I mean, look, I think people who are peddling that sort of nonsense in the UK, I don't think there's many of them, but any people who are peddling that in the UK are backpedaling our interests.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
Yeah.
Look, I care about climate because I've seen the science.
Right.
So that's why I care about climate, because of the science. It's fundamental, as you say, it's a puzzle, it's an engineering challenge, it's a science challenge. If people, if they never mention climate and are interested in electric vehicles and interested in making their homes more efficient and, you know, more comfortable.
And cheaper to run. And cheaper to run. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm not wedded, like, you know, and we all, different things appeal to each of us in different ways. So, you know, I'm very aware of that, and I don't really mind.
Right.
Like, I want Britain to be cleaner, greener, healthier, and wealthier.
Yeah.
Like, and I think this is a really good way to do it.
Yeah.
At the same time, I know that I will have done everything I can to leave things in a better place for my children and grandchildren. In the same, I haven't had grandchildren yet, but, you know, but in terms of, I think, you know, I don't, if the language works different ways, you know, things go in cycles, don't they? And as long as we're moving forward, what I get frustrated about is people trying to delay us. Or because a bit like, why? Like, what to what end? Do you know what I mean? Like, let's move forward. Let's try things. Let's make mistakes. Let's, you know, let's regroup. Let's listen. Let's learn. Let's be, you know, in motion. Just whinging from the sidelines doesn't float. That does annoy me. Yeah. But if you use different language, then I think that's fine. And actually, it's really interesting because obviously I get asked this question a lot, whereas actually the polling on climate and on support for it is pretty amazing. Like, it's actually, I think, you know, it's way up there in terms of circa 70% of people, which a political party would bite your hand off. Anyone, any business, any political party will bite your hand off for that sort of numbers. So like, sometimes politicians and whoever underestimate people. You know, when I go out knocking on doors in my constituency, look, of course, first and centre, people are trying to live their lives, you know, at day to day, but they also want to do that in a way that leaves things better, because that's like instinctively who we are as humans. And we want to make sure that we've got greener spaces, and actually we want things that are slightly better, and what we're proposing is a better system for our country. It's not a backgrade, it's an upgraded system. And fundamentally that's what we want: progress, we want upgrade. And I think a cleaner, greener, more British system is better for all of those reasons.
Because I mean, there was one survey that I remember reading about a couple of years ago, it's fairly recently, which is about onshore wind. And it was something like 85% of people support the idea of offshore wind, but 95% of people assume that all their neighbours and friends hate it. You go, oh, hang on, it's a slight country. What the hell is going on there? Which I totally understand, because I wouldn't mention it. Like my neighbours where I live, I wouldn't mention it, because I just think, oh, they'll hate it and they won't want it. And they, I've never actually asked them. I don't want to cause trouble. If you live in a small village, you have to be very discreet.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when we first started, obviously, with offshore winds coming in, we had the 25th anniversary of wind turbines the other day, I think.
Right.
But or onshore wind. But in terms of when it first started, I remember we had lots of local groups concerned, etc. And now it's like, oh, this is really, this is an elegant thing. And I always think they do look really elegant, actually. I mean, obviously different contexts, different places, but they do look pretty nice.
Yeah, I like them.
I think they're nicer, but yeah, they are pretty nice to look at.
But I had a very good example in the village I live in, where there was a discussion from farmers who wanted to put turbines on because they understood the economics of it. So the actual landowners around the village, there were 3 of them that said, and they couldn't get planning permission. This was a few years ago, and they were never going to get permission then. And then we did a little talk in the village hall where an energy expert came with a spreadsheet, which all the gentlemen brothers enjoyed the spreadsheet, and he showed, this is what solar panels do, this is the investment, this is the return, this is this and that. And then at the bottom it was, this is a wind turbine, this is how much it costs to put in, this is how quickly you get a return, and this is how much the village would make out of it. And all of a sudden, all these posh chaps going, those wind turbines are rather good. Complete change of mind.
I'm just gonna, no, it's funny, isn't it, how things. And I remember when in the last Labour government we did some investments on solar to try and flip the price. Obviously, the price had just come way down now, so they're incredibly cheap. But all of a sudden, there was people in the city going, I must invest in solar.
Oh, right,
And so, but look, the price has dropped massively, and I think we never expected solar to come down so much
to such an extent.
But now it just makes such sense. And one of the things that we're doing in Desnes is we're doing this with the GB Energy. We're investing in solar on schools and hospitals.
Right, which makes so much sense.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm allowed to talk about my constituency, but we actually had one in before my time.
Right.
So I think it's probably fine. And I won't mention where it was, but they had some on the hospital, and it's in the hospital car park. It makes complete sense. Everybody can see that. It makes complete sense.
Yes.
But for schools to have solar panels as well means that, and hopefully the teachers will use it as an opportunity as well for them to teach
about
exactly, because then you're in a whole systems learning piece, which I think would be great for us to learn more about that anyway. But and visually people can see in their school, and as I say, it becomes a sort of beacon. Oh, look at that, it's a red kite.
Yes, I did see him on the way up. Yeah.
So
shame we haven't got an
beautiful.
Exterior camera to get them. I don't think that was going to get it. Yeah.
I know. Isn't that nice to see a bit of? And there was some first few snowdrops popping through this morning.
That's interesting, because I live I'm a softy southerner, but we have had snowdrops for probably 10 days. Yeah, because they're all over the place, lots of them. So that's it. I didn't realise it was that local. It's extraordinary, isn't it? That if they've only just come out here, then we've definitely had them for a while.
I mean,
that's the environment for you.
There we go.
See?
Exactly. Well, and also like the gardeners and farmers here, there are some snowdrops. The gardeners and the farmers have been onto this for such a long time.
They kind of noticed, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. They can see things coming through at different times in a way that others didn't. But they also know how we're going to adapt to that in many ways, and how we can use nature as our ally in this. and things will shift and change, but how do we work with that as well as, you know, making sure we're putting in the investment for the challenges that are ahead, sadly.
Well, it is that. I mean, I'm old, so I've lived long enough to have seen really quite substantial changes in British weather, you know, and it isn't weather, it is climate, because when I was a kid, we got snow. It snowed in the winter and we'd build an igloo and a snowman, and it just, you know, I'm sure it wasn't every winter, but it was a lot of winters. And I wouldn't be able to go to school because the snow was so deep. And, you know, when you're a kid, you remember that time. Wow, we didn't go to school.
Brilliant.
And then when the village we live in now is high up and, you know, has a history of being cut off, you know, for a couple of days with the snow. And we were told that when we moved there by the locals. It's happened one day in 37 years. We have not been able to get out of the house for one day in 37 years, and it was a regular occurrence. So this year I don't think there's been any snow at all. It never, and it was proper deep snow up to your knees, that kind of level of snow, and big drifts that block the roads. That just doesn't.
No, totally. I think,
something's happened a bit, and then you'll have something like what's happening in New York at the moment, where they've got unbelievable. Incredibly low temperatures and masses of snow, so it's, you know.
Well, as you say, it's the changes.
It's changing, isn't it?
It's the changes, and it's been a bit frustrating. People say, "Oh, it's, you know, is it not hotter? Is it not this or whatever?"
Yeah.
I think one of the things for me, I was talking to the Met Office, and they were like, "We're now seeing 10% more rain within the clouds." Basically, the fact that we've had all this rain.
Yeah, there's a reason.
Exactly, and it is increased precipitation.
Yeah.
So it's changes. I mean, look. You know, I don't want to be scaremongery because I don't think that particularly helps us. I guess the facts are we are conducting a global experiment on our planet.
Yeah.
We know what that is leading towards because of our scientists, but we don't know exactly how some of that pans out. But it means uncertain weather conditions, whether it's, you know, more intense thunderstorms, more rain, which we all know. I mean, flipping heck, the rain the last few months has been relentless, hasn't it? Absolutely relentless. It's the extremities as much as anything. So, I think it's a hard one to sort of explain that. But I think, and I want to explain that to people in terms of the flooding risks and everything, to explain why we're doing this and why we need to be more resilient and why we need to make those shifts.
Yeah.
But then very quickly move forward, because I think we are in a better position, whether it's because we've got better cars, whether it's because we understand the technology better, whether because things are cheaper, because, you know, we're working with other people and we're learning things.
Yeah.
We are in a position still to transition swiftly, but we don't need any messing about, and we don't need any back chat from people who, you know, don't want to have.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I mean, welcome to my world.
Yeah. But then that, you know, it's all right if we go all eco and all green, but what about China? They're burning more coal than ever. That argument, I just go, for goodness sake, you know, they literally doubled the amount of solar panels in action on the planet last year, in 1 year, or from the time the first solar panel was tried out in a hippie commune in California in 1969 or whatever. You know, they are making, because it makes economic sense.
Exactly.
Apart from anything else, it makes economic sense that they're doing that. But that's.
Yeah, well, and the carbon briefers think that they think that China's probably peaked to their emissions, which would be fantastic for everybody, because obviously they are so big. But you're so right. I mean, I understand they've got 31 nuclear power stations under development, you know, as well. Like, they are at pace doing way more, and you know, in a time frame that, you know, is pretty unbelievable.
But actually, the arguments you've been making about this country, you know, even if that's my favourite ever cartoon, which was a drawing of a climate conference, and there's a man standing up at the back. You might have seen it, going, "What if we make the world better, and it's all because of a hoax?" Well, hang on, you've made the world better.
Yeah, exactly.
So even if climate change is a total liberal Nazi con job and everything's fine, the technology that's being developed now is better than the technology we used to
Exactly.
use. I mean, that's
Exactly.
the argument, really.
And a lot of it's British.
And a lot of it's British.
A lot of it's British, a lot of it's led by our science, and it's going to make us more secure in terms of we will have our own system in place. And I think most people feel that that is, you know, a good thing, as you say.
Yeah.
A lot of it is incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking to upgrade the country. This is the way to do it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you for driving me through the rain.
I'm so sorry. I wanted it to be sunny in Yorkshire.
Yeah. No, it's never sunny. Every time I've been here, it's pouring with rain and freezing cold. No, not at all.
So proud of like people that I'm always like, oh no, I want it to be, you know, and it is beautiful, whatever. But obviously, everywhere looks better in the sun.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's been brilliant, Katie. Thank you so much. It's really interesting. Well, I really hope you enjoyed that. What a fascinating person. What an amazing conversation. Really enjoyed doing that. Really hope you enjoyed it too. If you watch or listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, can you give us one of those 5-star recommendations? Because they really help us. They don't cost you anything. It takes you a quarter of a second to do. Really is a helpful thing for us. The same with YouTube, same with everywhere else. Please do subscribe to the show. Please do tell your friends about it. And as always, if you have been, thank you for watching.